What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rotoworld Basketball Show. I'm Dan Titus, joined with Raphielle Johnson and Noah Rubin. We're into week 4 of fantasy basketball, and we got things to talk about. Not all bad this time, though. Salute to Klay Thompson, Captain Klay, we should call him. It was really dope to see his first return to the Golden State Warriors. Had a pretty good performance, too. 22 points, 6 3-pointers. Finally may have gotten out of his slump. But what are your thoughts, Raph, on the return of Klay and that whole big moment for the NBA, and I mean the Emirates Cup really made a big splash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it was great, to see him be honored for all of his years of hard work for that organization. I know he wanted to be more low key about it, but I'm sure it feels good to be appreciated, and to receive that outward love that he did. But it was a great night to start, and the game was just as good, if not better. It was just kind of funny to see Klay on the wrong end of one of those Steph moments after being kind of a teammate for so many of them. So, yeah, great game. The Warriors continue to impress overall, I think, outside of that Cleveland game. But I think with Dallas, I'm kind of wondering how much is Luka going to have to adjust his game here? Because it feels like they don't always get Klay going early. It happened last night, but there are times where he kind of goes long sessions without shots. And it's hard for a shooter to keep up rhythm like that. So I think Luka's the one I'm kind of keeping my eye on here in terms of offensive rhythm and how he gets his shots, because I think he settles sometime too. But a great night, as you said.
Yeah, Noah, and what are your thoughts on the Dallas side of things? Derek Lively made his return to the lineup, played pretty well, 12 points, 8 boards, 1 block. But yeah, I think I also see that dependency on Luka. I think time and time again we see Luka having to make all these difficult shots and plays to kind of keep the Dallas Mavericks alive. And this is their 4th close game that they've lost or blown a lead in the 4th quarter. So what are you seeing, Noah, from a fantasy perspective and just in general from the Dallas side of things?
Yeah, as far as, I guess, the clutch games, clutch situations, like you have 3 guys that are, I would say, historically great shot makers with Luka, Kyrie, and Klay. And Klay's maybe not the guy that you're thinking, oh, go give me a game-winning shot, but more than capable of hitting one. Obviously, kind of not the same player that he was. It was fun to see him get going last night. It doesn't really alter my fantasy perspective of him. He wasn't the guy I was looking to draft this year. But this was his best game since their first game of the year. And I think kind of what it's been the last couple seasons is, hey, he'll give you threes when he gets hot, and when he gets going, he's going to tank your field goal percentage. As far as Lively and Gafford and like the minute split, Raph, I don't know if you remember that I said this yesterday. I said when we were talking about Dallas, like, oh, it's not like it's like a 24 minute split when both those guys are healthy. And then if you look,
it was yesterday,
they
literally 24.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's a bad look for me for that to be exactly perfect. Like I'm going to attribute it to Jason Kidd listening to our show yesterday and doing that on purpose. But that if he can continue to do that, where it's those guys playing a minute split, then that's great for both of their fantasy values, because it meant no Maxi Kleber minutes and no Dwight Powell minutes. And it always is interesting seeing how teams use big men against the Warriors, because Golden State's big man rotation is so different from other teams. So that could have been a factor there to consider as well.
Yeah, I'm going back to Golden State for a second. It's pretty interesting that in this day and age, not one player through 10 games is averaging over 30 minutes per night. Steph's gotten up over 35 minutes the last 2 games, but this is definitely a concerted effort on Steve Kerr and the Warriors to hey, let's manage the time for each player. But I think it also just speaks to the depth of the Golden State Warriors. So, Raph, are you concerned as a fantasy manager for anyone like a Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield? Like, even though they don't play that 30-minute threshold, they're still very good fantasy players right now.
Not them, but I think the ship has left the port with Brandon Podziemski at this point. I think 17 minutes last night, didn't do too much while out there. It feels like if there's going to come a point where Steve Kerr feels the need to trim down the rotation, he may be the first one sacrificed, so to speak. So I think if you're holding on to Podziemski, kind of hoping to get something out of him, I think it's time to move on. Maybe use that spot to kind of rotate amongst waiver wire options, because I don't think you're going to get much in terms of trade value. So that'll be my one takeaway with the Warriors fantasy-wise right now.
Yeah, and the Warriors only have one more game this week, and it's at the end of the week. So, there's not a great chance you're going to be holding Podziemski at this point. even Andrew Wiggins, I'd say, like with his inconsistencies, I don't think he's roster either. But yeah, let's talk about the dominance of Nikola Jokic for a second here. This man's he leads the league in rebounds per game as well as assists per game.
All right.
It's absolutely crazy. What's up, Raph?
Now, I was just going to add with Maxi Kleber, even though he's not been on the injury report the last couple games, they announced during the broadcast that he's still injured. So kind of need the Mavericks of the league to kind of clean that up with the injury report, because talk about 24-24 split. If he's available, that's why you probably won't have a 24-24 split.
Right.
Yeah, asking the NBA teams to be transparent and honest about their injury reporting, I think, is definitely a task that we would all love to see change, but I don't know if we're ever going to get there. But yeah, back to dominance of Jokic, though. Leads the league in rebounds, leads the league in assists. If that continues on that track, he would be the only person in NBA history besides Wilt Chamberlain to do that, which is crazy. Like, that's not even a modern era stat. More comparisons of Jokic to Wilt Chamberlain, how special he is. But I think one other aspect of Jokic's dominance is that he's already he just raises the floor for so many other players. And when Aaron Gordon left, they had a really good assist combination. Their assist network was always really strong. But like, we got to speak to what Christian Braun is doing. And Noah, I know that you spent a good amount of time and a really good article on Rotoworld, excuse me. Can't talk about the ops. But no, go check out Noah's article on Rotoworld. It's really good about just the ascension of Christian Braun. And right now, the Jokic to Braun combinations, top 8 in the league right now. So this is working. So Noah, talk more about how Christian Braun's just kind of exceeded our expectations, considering he went undrafted in 93% of leagues this year.
Yeah, he's been a perfect fit next to Jokic. He knows how to play without the ball, and Jokic knows how to find players that are wide open. In that column that you referenced, there was literally a play where he kind of just cut to the basket. Dan Gafford was guarding him. He helped to double on Jokic in the post, and Jokic just dumped it off to him. Christian Braun literally standing in front of the rim with no defenders and just placed the ball on the rim. It's like, can we say, oh, Christian Braun's having this fantastic season? He is, but it's like, it's just because of how good Jokic is. Like, he wouldn't probably be doing this on 29 other NBA teams. But the stat that really jumped out to me that I thought was just so cool, funny, what you can probably use a number of words, but Christian Braun has made 58 shots this year. I don't know, maybe y'all read it and know the number I'm about to say, but do you know how many of those Jokic assisted on?
It's got to be high. It's got to be in the 40s. I can't recall the exact number. I'm going to say 46.
Probably in the 50s.
Okay, it's 45%, but 26 of his 58 shots have been assisted by Jokic. That, I mean, some of the shots that he's hit have just been coast-to-coast layups. So pretty much about like almost half of the times that Christian Braun's made a shot this year is because Jokic passed him the ball, and that's just nuts.
Absolutely crazy. I mean, even his assists, like you.
Oh, you did.
You're back. You are back.
You're back.
See you, man.
All right, we back. This is why I got the Pelicans hat, man. We're all broken and injured over here. I have the internet, like my phone is messed up, man. We're down bad right now. What's I gonna say to that? Oh, yeah, that's right. The points at the rim for Braun. I mean, he's assisted 17 of his shots of his 30 over the last couple of games, I think, have gone near the rim. So, yeah, it's just sometimes you find those players that are just extremely efficient based off of other players, and that's Christian Braun, man. He's just winning by playing with Jokic. And do you think analyst Raph got it wrong putting Victor Wembanyama as the number 1 overall pick this year? Like, just seeing this that Jokic kind of came out, or we just got to wait a little bit longer on Wemby?
I think he's fine. Like, he's number 2. It's not like Wemby's like outside of the top 75 or something. He's ranked 2nd in 9-cap per game value. So I don't think analysts got it wrong. Maybe in terms of like speaking in absolute terms about it is where we may have gone wrong. But yeah, I don't think saying that Wemby should have been the first overall pick during the offseason was necessarily wrong. It's just that Jokic is so great that he's kind of made it look wrong, but Wemby's not having a terrible year by any stretch of the imagination.
No, if anything, I'd say that Wemby I think we're seeing him just kind of playing around right now. Like he's settling for a lot of jump shots. At some point, this man's going to go to the basket and just dominate even more. So like he's starting to put together those Wemby-like lines that we were expecting. 9 block games, 12 stocks, like all of that is definitely coming. Speaking to which, prayers up for Greg Popovich, suffered a mild stroke. Don't have a timetable for his return, but ever since he's been out, man, Chris Paul's been a whole different player, and so is Wemby. So just hope that he gets better. But yeah, Noah, didn't know if you wanted to say anything else about Jokic and just the debate between him being a consensus, number 1, number 2 this year in fantasy analyst world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty much everybody saying you take one of those 2 guys, 1 or 2. If you want to take the upside pick, you take Wemby. If you want to feel a little safer, you go Jokic. But I think if you took Wemby number 1, you were probably already playing into his strengths and kind of knowing what his weaknesses were going to be. But I think even if he hasn't shot the ball very well to this point, 44.6 is not like percent from the field is not what you expect from a guy that's 7'4", 7'5". But obviously the blocks are still there. He's double-digit rebounds, bunch of threes, not scoring quite as well as we expected, but he got better as the season went along last year. He's learning how to play with Chris Paul. Devin Vassell's been out for a while, so it's a pretty different team. The number that kind of really impresses me is that he's 92% from the free throw line. I think in my mind, I think he was like 78, 79 last year, and it was, okay, if you can get this like 84, that's going to be great. But if this is just what Wemby is, like maybe not a 92, but like a 85 plus, like 88% free throw shooter for the next 10 years, like this guy's going to be doing everything in fantasy. That's crazy.
Yeah, you can't hack a Wemby. That's one thing you absolutely cannot do. Speaking of whack, just absolutely whack. Chet Holmgren's going to be out for at least 8 to 10 weeks. We'll see. I mean, a hip fracture doesn't sound particularly good. Now it's just a waiting game for Isaiah Hartenstein to come back. Where do fantasy managers go from here, Raph? I mean, for me, I think there is a distinct possibility that Jalen Williams might get center eligibility, which would make him 4. You can fit him into 4 spots potentially in Yahoo leagues, which is insane. That's definitely a cheat code. But do you think that the Thunder will do anything here, or do you think they're just going to hold the fort until Isaiah Hartenstein comes back?
I think they're going to hold the fort, to be honest with you. They have enough interchangeable pieces. Now, they're going to be at a disadvantage some nights, so you go up against a more bruising 5-man. But overall, I think they have the pieces to do it. Like you mentioned, Jalen Williams, he added some muscle during the offseason. I think that's going to help him in this spot and help the Thunder in general, just so he can take on some more physical matchups. But in terms of like fantasy pickups, I don't really think there's anybody there. We talked about this on the show, on the Q&A yesterday. Yeah, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, and Cason Wallace, they've all kind of interchanged that 5th starting spot. Now you pretty much have room for 2 of those guys to start, but you never really know who's going to shine on any given night. So, yeah, those guys, Alex Caruso, I don't really know if any are all that appealing in terms of fantasy value right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was holding out hope, I guess, for that Alex Caruso, to kind of have that resurgence that he had last year. But like, as you said, it's just moving pieces of the shuffle, and they're still winning games. So I think they don't really have to do anything drastic. It's not like a Sixers Bucks situation where it's like, hey, we're down bad, we got to make something happen here. No, let's talk about Dyson Daniels a bit, because I mean, you were on the hype train from day one, and he's balling, dude. Like, this man's averaging 7.3 deflections per game. He's averaging 3.6 steals per game, which is insane. Like that, I was going into stat head just geeking out for a second, because I'm like, I'm pretty sure no one's averaged 3.5 steals for a game. And like, you got to go way, way back to 2 names that I've never even heard of before. So this guy's doing unprecedented stuff right now. So yeah, speak to Dyson Daniels. I know you touched on him last week as one of your dynasty risers, but yeah, go off.
Yeah, I did write another column about him, and I promise anyone listening, we didn't sit here and try and find every column I've written and just talk about those guys to plug all that work. But I mean, Dyson Daniels is a guy that you just have to talk about, whether you're writing about fantasy or just NBA in general. He's just been that good. Since I wrote this column talking about how good he has been while seeing more minutes, he has played 4 games and has a total of 23 steals. Like, these are video game numbers. I mean, it's very difficult to do that in a video game. And it's gonna play incredibly well in fantasy because nobody's getting that many steals. I think I have him in two of my like highest investment leagues. So I'm very happy about that because I shouldn't lose steals hardly ever if he keeps playing like this. But I do want to highlight a little bit of the offensive side of the ball because everybody's talking about the defense because the numbers are insane. I'm sure we can talk about it more. But against Boston last night with Trae Young out, Dyson Daniels did a little bit more playmaking, had a season high 7 assists, season high 28 points. Some of the passes that he made were like, out of the pick and rolls, throwing skip passes to the corner. Like it wasn't just, basic, I'm stepping into a point guard role and I get more assists. Like he was making some incredible passes, was able to get to floaters pretty consistently against Derek White and Drew Holiday. Even the last shot of the game where he did like a little spin move around Drew Holiday, got a good floater up, a shot he had been hitting all game. And then, I don't know if it was Nance or Okongwu, but one of them, so both of them kind of tipped it at the same time. It was, I guess, Okongwu got his hand on the ball and ended up winning the game because of that. But to be guarding Jason Tatum the whole game and score 28 points on Drew Holiday and Derek White it's nutty. So this guy is, I'm very happy to have him in Atlanta.
I feel like I should talk about Grady Dick after you say something like that. But the Dyson Daniels, dude, like the float game that you're talking about, man, like it's just crazy how fluid that is. And like I didn't see that offensive growth in him. It was somewhat apparent in the Paris Olympics, but not like this. And Trae Young could miss more games. He's got Achilles tendonitis right now, so like that sounds like something that's going to be a nagging injury. So Dyson Daniels could be looking at like one of those league winner. He already looked like a league winner before, but like if he continues to get this playmaking opportunities along with the scoring, I mean the 3-point shooting's been there too. They just look really good with him running the point. So yeah, I think that this is a win for all fantasy managers that locked him up. Trey Murphy made his return. One good thing. Raph's got something
I don't get to talk about Dyson.
I mean, we could just read Noah's article. He pretty much covered it, but now it's playing.
Well, he's got 6 steals or more in 3 straight games, which is halfway to the record held by Alvin Robertson. Now, you youngsters who don't know about Alvin Robertson, get on YouTube, watch some highlights or something. That man's one of the greatest wing defenders in NBA history, to be honest with you. So to be in that class, that says a lot about what Dyson is doing. Noah mentioned the offense is coming along. It feels like his progression is a lot like what we saw from Jalen Johnson last year. So if you're going to get like a 3rd round type play value from him, like you said, Dan, this could be a potential league winner for people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how you sell him at this point. Like, I don't know. There's certain players that I feel like, have given you enough of a sample size of like, I'm for real. Like, this is legit. Like, you don't need to trade this guy. Like, whereas like a Darius Garland is like 6th in per game value. I'm like, we've seen Darius Garland before. This seems like this is going to regress. But the combination, like, I mean, I feel like, not saying that Dyson Daniels is going to sustain that steals market over 3 a game, but like that's like a Wemby type of advantage you have there in a category. That's not something that fantasy managers were predicting at all. So like you got to hold on to that. On the flip side of that, it's kind of interesting that Jordan Poole's still over 2 steals per game. I feel like I have more faith in Dyson Daniels being able to maintain 3 than I do Jordan Poole maintaining 2. But either way, I think both guys are definitely paying well above expectation right now.
If I can add in one more thing about Dyson, I promise this will be the last thing about Dyson Daniels. We can talk about anybody else, but he hasn't shot the ball well from 3 so far. But I think I still see, because I think
he's taking them.
Raph, you were saying that the Jalen Johnson development kind of thing. Jalen Johnson was occasionally hitting a 3 at the beginning of the season. Literally over the course of last season, got better as a 3-point shooter. And Okongwu is a guy that since Quinn Snyder came in has developed more of a 3-point shot. If Snyder's wanting him to hit them, they'll make sure he's working on. Kyle Korver is in that building. I'm not saying he's going to become like a 40% 3-point shooter, but I don't think he's going to continue to shoot 27%. I think it'll get better as the season goes on. Okay, now we can talk about other players.
I mean, at least he's attempting them. At least he's attempting them for a game. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe Fred Vincent, maybe Kyle Korver, I could expect would be like a better version of Fred Vincent, but I don't know. But yeah, can we talk about Trey Murphy now? He made his return finally to made his return, and unfortunately, Jose Alvarado left with a hamstring injury, which leaves the New Orleans Pelicans down to like no point guards. Yeah. So that's that report. So if you have Pelicans players, hopefully you've picked up Brandon Boston Jr. This guy stepped up a lot in the absence of CJ McCollum, now Jose Alvarado. But Trey Murphy, I mean, he's on a minutes restriction. So like, I feel like from a fantasy perspective, if you held on to him, he's probably in a pretty good position to, even in a minutes restricted situation, to provide value for fantasy managers.
Yeah, I have to be wearing. You're gutsy to wear that hat. Like, an injury could befall you at any point.
They might go walk outside and take a walk, trip the ball over my face. Right?
6 weeks. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's just an unfortunate situation for all the Pelicans involved here. But I do want to highlight the breakout of Yves Moussa here. I mean, at least last game, 17 points, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks. Is this something, Raph, that you're believing in, or is this more so a byproduct of, Zion's hurt, Tice isn't particularly good, like he's next man up, and maybe he actually has an opportunity to show what he can do, whereas before he was kind of like, go get some rebounds. We're not going to really run much offense through you. Kind of seems that maybe that pendulum might be swinging just a little bit by all the injuries.
Yeah, I think he can still add value when all those guys get back. And plus, you look at that center position, who else are they really going to play? Like, I know Daniel Tice is a respected veteran, but I don't think you want him playing like starters minutes. Or he wasn't even playing starters minutes when he was a starter. Carlo Matkovic, we've seen nothing from him. So I think it's Yves Moussa's job. If he can get up to about 30 minutes per game, I believe that's where you really see the fantasy value kind of take off, even if the shot attempts aren't there once everyone's available.
I think that's fair. What are your thoughts on just the Pelican situation in general, Noah? Is there anyone that you think might be a deep add, or you're pretty much just working with, what we have now, and Brandon Boston Jr. and Trey, just Moussa? I mean, there's not many other people we could speak about.
Yeah, when Raph and I were talking about it yesterday on the Q&A, because half the questions were about like literally what do we do? Like if we have Pelicans players rostered, like what do we do? I think the one other name that I would throw out there is Jalen Noel, who I think had 11.6 assists off the bench in their last game. And with Alvarado out, he might start. I don't think if we know for sure if he'll start, but I think he'll play a lot, have a lot of playmaking opportunities. They'll use Brandon Boston, who's another guy that I think you should definitely add, and Brandon Ingram as other primary ball handlers. If you're healthy and playing 20 minutes per game in New Orleans, then I mean, I think you have to at least consider streaming them. It's going to be a lot of guys that you weren't expect to be streaming in the middle of November.
Yep, that's fantasy basketball for you. Coming off a pretty disappointing, well, actually it wasn't disappointing on Raph's side because Karl-Anthony Towns dominated the Sixers. Are we buying or selling him being a top 10 player the rest of the season, Noah?
Buying who?
Karl-Anthony Towns.
Okay. Just what his I think I would. Honestly, I think just looking at his numbers, it might even just be closer to top 5 for the rest of the year. But I think top 10 is pretty safe. He's the most rebounds that he has averaged per game in a season is 12.4, which is what he is averaging now. He did it in the 2018-2019 season. Yeah. And so it's his best rebounding season. The 3-point percentage, like I don't think he'll continue to shoot 51% from 3, but he'll continue to shoot enough of them where the 3-point value doesn't go down. So even if the field goal percentage, which is one of the best of his careers, takes a slight, like I guess, hit down, I'm not too worried about that dramatically tanking his value. And he's averaging 0.9 blocks. I could see that going up. I don't remember the exact stat, but like if you guys think of it, tell me. It was like his percentage that he's giving up in the paint. It's like 90% of shots or something that have been hit. I'll try and find that.
Yeah, Tim Bontemps talked about that on ESPN about how their rim protection just hasn't been particularly good. But like, I mean, once Mitchell Robinson comes back, that's going to change the dynamic of how the Knicks play. So like, I'm not as concerned about that. And clearly, I mean, yeah, it was the Sixers. It was Joel Embiid's first game back, but the Sixers didn't take advantage of their gaps in the paint at all. So I think Karl-Anthony Towns is doing fine. He's just playing away from the basket a little bit. OG Anunoby's been ridiculous defensively. So I think that as long as they continue to stay healthy, like I think that they're going to continue to be a pretty damn good team, and they'll just get adjusted to those defensive, gaps and lulls right now that they're having. I think that's just time of getting more chemistry and understanding the assignments and so forth. We're going to get Raph's opinion on this once the landscapers chill out a little bit. But yeah, it's just from a Sixers perspective, I think it's just going to take time, right? Like clearly just going to take time.
I feel better about Philadelphia than I do Milwaukee. I'll say that much.
That's not saying much.
In terms of like, in terms of like non-fantasy opinions, I feel better about them just because we've at least now seen Embiid on the court. We've seen Paul George on the court. Need to wait to get Tyrese Maxey back. Jared McCain has really started to play good basketball recently. So you look at Milwaukee by comparison, we don't know when Chris Middleton's going to be back. And then the pieces they have around Giannis and Dame right now aren't very good. So, Brook Lopez has regressed in terms of his play. So I feel a lot better about Philly. I think Jared McCain, he's pretty low rostered right now. I would definitely – I don't know if I turn off this podcast and go get him if you're watching live, but no Embiid and no George tonight. You need to have Jared McCain on your roster.
Yeah, I mean, Jared McCain's been more reliable than Kelly Oubre. He's been more reliable than Caleb Martin. I think both of those guys are pretty much underwhelming at this point, but even Andre Drummond right now was probably dropped once people heard that Joel Embiid's coming back. But, I mean, if you're looking for like a streamer in shallow leagues, I think he makes a lot of sense, still rebounding at a ridiculous rate, tops in the league in terms of percentage. So, yeah, I think from the Sixers perspective, I agree with you, Raph. I'm not as concerned as I would be for the Bucks, who just look like they have nothing outside of Giannis. And if Lillard continues to stay in concussion protocol, like good luck. Like they just have nothing outside of Giannis. But yeah, I think that the Knicks, though, Jalen Brunson did suffer an ankle sprain. He returned to the game, played through it. He is questionable, or actually moved to a game time decision. So we'll see if he's a go. I think he's one of those guys that always plays through injuries, unlike pretty much everybody on the Sixers. So I feel like Jalen Brunson's probably going to be in a good place to keep it going, as well as Deuce McBride, who also showed up on the injury report. Yeah, if you're in a deep league, I think adding Jared McCain makes sense. I mean, he's just seeing more minutes. Hopefully Nick Nurse realizes that he's the only competent scorer off the bench right now. Oh, actually, no. Yabusele has been great. Actually, he needs to be playing more minutes as well. I'd actually like to see him get more minutes than Caleb Martin for now. But this isn't a Sixers podcast. I let Noah go off on his Dyson Daniels rant for quite some time. So thank you for sparing us, Raph, and not having to talk about your Knicks any more than we have to. But from a potential top 10 player in fantasy league the rest of the season, Karl-Anthony Towns, to Big Ten Saturday night. We got Oregon's march to the college football playoff continuing on Saturday night as the Ducks face an upset-minded Wisconsin team at Camp Randall Stadium. Coverage of the Big Ten showdown begins at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. All right. So Anthony Davis got plucked in the eye, refuses to wear goggles, apparently. Not mad at it. I feel like, who was the last player? Was it Reggie Jackson that wore goggles? He still does, right? That's just kind of a forgotten, swag.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't wear them anymore?
Trey Young's worn them from time to time. Or the glasses.
Yeah, not anymore for Reggie.
Okay, that's good. Well,
yeah,
Anthony Davis doesn't want to wear goggles, but he's good to go. His eye is straight. We talked about Trey Young's Achilles tendonitis. Doesn't look like it's going to be a long-term injury, but definitely something fantasy managers will want to continue to monitor. But I think more concerningly, Immanuel Quickley made his return to play after suffering a groin injury. He's back, and then now he's suffering a UCL injury, which is an injury that you more commonly see in baseball, Tommy John. But for basketball's sake, it doesn't seem like the injury timeline is as extended or troublesome as baseball, but he's still going to be out at least a week, and it could possibly be more. Noah, are you going to pick up Davion Mitchell as a result of this? Are you still leaning into, I mean, it's really just the RJ Barrett and Grady Dick show. So, yeah, but I don't know. Is Davion Mitchell piquing your interest at all?
I think both of those things can be true, because I mean, all three of them were playing well at the same time. But yeah, I think Davion Mitchell is worth adding at this point. For like just a standard 12-team league or like a points league, it's a little bit more iffy. But if you're in a slightly deeper league, and you really need that assist boost, then yeah, definitely a guy to add. We saw what he did as a starter. I think there's only one start where he had less than 5 assists at this point. So, and the steals, we know he's a good defender. He hasn't really been great about those, but I think those are the 2 categories where you'll get a boost in, and then points from time to time. But yeah, I think I'd be streaming him, especially for an assist boost.
Yeah, and just want to shout out the play of Grady Dick. This dude's just been unconscious right now. I mean, should probably be in the conversation for most improved player. We'll see how much longer Scotty Barnes and the supporting cast will be out. But, I mean, right now, this guy is a featured bucket right now. And the way that he's getting to his spots, the creativity in which he's hitting these shots, this dude was coming in labeled as like a spot-up guy, but, like, he is not. He's driving. He's catching lobs. He's playing in transition. Like, he's crossing people up. Like, he's got a nice little bag here. And just one more note on Davion Mitchell. Never really was a 3-point shooter like that, but now he's getting up almost 4 per game right now. So, I mean, if you do wind up streaming him, he's making them more than he was before. So I think that's just another element to his game now that he's getting more opportunity to showcase what he can do. Didn't really get a real good opportunity in Sacramento, but clearly Toronto is giving him that chance. So, Raph, any thoughts? Are you you've got that up? Nope, still got that thing behind you?
Yeah, but I think that's fair. I'd keep an eye on Ochai Agbaji as well. I think he's played a little bit better recently. So there's someone that you may have an easier time of finding in the waiver wire if you're in a deep league and are desperate for some contributions. He's consistently in the starting lineup at this point. Probably be the case until Scotty Barnes returns too.
Yeah. And in Detroit, Tim Hardaway Jr. went down with an injury. Then he got back up. Then he got like bulldozed over and had to leave on a cart in a wheelchair. Crazy. It's probably going to be in the concussion protocol if I had to guess. But it doesn't look like he'll be back. Man, they're going to town out there, man.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but
it's
yeah.
See, this is the curse of the Pelicans, man. You put on a Pelicans hat and everything goes awry. But nah, so the Pistons, though, Tim Hardaway Jr. has been giving them good minutes. Malik Beasley had to step up in OT and has actually found his shot over the last couple of games. He's not someone that I feel comfortable adding right now just because of he's just a streaky player. But I just wanted to make note of the fact that Asar Thompson has been cleared to practice and he's starting now to ramp up. If you guys have seen any videos of his jump shot, my God, that thing, Vincent is working his ways and his magic because his jumper looks completely different. And right now he's still 40% rostered in leagues, but I don't know what that, I don't know, maybe this is Yahoo data kind of, I don't know, inconsistent data or whatever, but like I see him available in way more 12-team competitive leagues that I'm in than I'd be surprised just because he's had that injury label. Pick him up if he's available. I think this is a good time now that, not saying that I'm trying to pick him up as a result of someone's injury and misery, but just thinking long-term here, the profile for what Asar Thompson does for fantasy is very similar to his brother. Can give you rebounds. He can play make. If he's able to knock down some threes, man, that's a game changer for him. So I would get ahead of the curve here and grab Asar Thompson if he's still somebody that you could stash in the injury spot. What are your thoughts on that, Noah?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Make sure he's not on your waiver wire. It'll be interesting to see how JB Bickerstaff approaches the rotation because he is an incredibly impactful player, but they've had Tim Hardaway starting to provide spacing. And even if Asar Thompson's shot looks better, they're not having him in there to space the floor and allow Cade Cunningham to operate. One note for tonight, Jaden Ivey's out, Tim Hardaway Jr. is out, Simone Fontecchio's out. So Malik Beasley should start. And a little revenge game in Milwaukee. Could we see a bunch of threes? Maybe. And then extra minutes for Ron Holland, maybe even Marcus Sasser in the rotation. Not anything fantasy relevant for Sasser, but they're missing a lot of guys tonight.
Yeah. Any parting words on the Detroit Pistons there, Raph? Other than, Cade Cunningham's been playing outstanding lately. Just want to highlight that. And Jalen during that out of bounds play to win the game, throwing that alley was a really, really cool play to see.
Yeah, they've been a much improved basketball team. I know they're still under 500, but it just looks like they know what they want to do. At this point, it's about getting to the point where you can actually do it. Late game execution. They didn't do that against Houston. They got a couple, intentionally missed free throws, but they didn't cash in. Come back a couple nights later, they get it done in overtime against the Heat. So there's certainly signs of progress there. Like you mentioned, Alsar Thompson, definitely someone you want to get ahead of the curve on now and grab if he's available. Because even if he doesn't play like starters minutes, he only needs 20 to 25 with his profile to give you good value. So that's someone to definitely have on your roster. I'm just hoping Malik Beasley does that shimmy one time and tonight during the Bucks game, just to see what type of reaction it kind of sparks from his former teammates.
Dude, I wouldn't be surprised if Detroit just waxes the Bucks at this point off a back-to-back. Like this, I could see Beasley going crazy off of this one. So this one might be the streaming night for Malik Beasley. The Pacers, they're going to be missing Andrew Nembhard for at least 2 more weeks with a knee injury. Very unfortunate there. And then Aaron Nesmith, I think this is more of an impact here. He's going to be out till December, it looks like, with an ankle injury. So Benedict Mathurin to the moon, y'all. We here for it. We talked about it last week, but I think that this is definitely some staying power. What are you thinking, Raph?
Yeah, he unfortunately went off on Sunday. But, 57% rostered. More standard league managers need to hop on the bandwagon because he's been more efficient in terms of scoring, the ways in which he attacks for his points. The defense still isn't there, but the rebounding, 6.1 rebounds per game. So you're getting value in other areas beyond points. And the 3-pointers, I think, are up as well. 1.9, so you'll definitely take that compared to what he's done in the past. So, yeah, Benedict Mathurin to the moon.
And Noah, anybody else on the Pacers that you see potentially, stepping up? We talked about Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman, obviously going down with their respective injuries for the season. Jarris Walker's gotten more minutes, and as well as Obi Toppin a little bit, but I don't think anyone's really particularly impressed by him. But anybody else that you're looking at on the Pacers as a result of all these injuries?
Yeah, just a couple other names to throw out. I'm not saying these are guys to drop what you're doing and go add, but Ben Shepherd did start. I mean, he's really there to space the floor. And he'll probably have some games where he hits threes, but not a guy that I'm necessarily looking to stream. But maybe if things change, if he starts playing well, just keep an eye on him. And then we've seen TJ McConnell make a really big impact as a streamer in the past. He only played 16 minutes in their last game. So I don't know. Something to keep an eye on because we know he can get you a bunch of assists and steals. But neither of those guys, I mean, it's Mathurin. He's the guy to add.
Yeah. And then one last little injury update for the Lakers. We talked about Anthony Davis and his eye injury, but Christian Wood's he suffered a setback with his knee, so he's not coming back. And then I just got an update that Jackson Hayes is going to be missing a couple weeks at least with an injury as well. So I don't know, the Lakers are looking kind of thin in that front court there. I don't know if there's anybody that really you would pick up in fantasy. This offense is pretty much maxed out with the starters here, plus D'Angelo Russell. But I think that's actually something to talk about. D'Lo getting benched, and is he a must hold for you, either of you, in standard leagues right now?
No, I don't think he's a must hold. I think that I'm not saying he definitely drop him and keep an eye on it. It looks like he is playing better, but he's getting less minutes in a reserve role. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of iffy. I'm not saying definitely drop him. He's not like, if you feel like you need to drop him, then do it. As far as the centers, just a quick note. I think Christian Coloco is probably going to be the guy on the floor when Anthony Davis isn't. That might mean 12 minutes per game, and it's not enough to impact fantasy. But we talked about the eye thing earlier. If something changes where Anthony Davis is forced to miss a game, I have no idea what they'll do because Christian Coloco is literally the only other option at center.
Yeah.
So he might be worth a stream in that sense, but that's probably about it.
And yeah, so I was going to think about something else that I was going to say about the Lakers, but I think it pretty much is what it is. Going back to Washington for a second, we touched on Jordan Poole, but I think now that Kyle Kuzma's back from his groin injury, Kyshawn George was a guy that was trending up and still going to see significant minutes, still probably going to play 20 minutes a night. But Raph, want to get your thoughts on his progression to date, and how do you see his value kind of going forward? Like, obviously, if Kyle Kuzma ever gets traded or something happens, I think his opportunity size is sizably different. But I think he's looked really good in the time that he's played right now, enough to establish a firm role in this rotation.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the case for all three Wizards rookies is that the shooting efficiency has been down, but you kind of expect that. But all three of them, whether you're talking Kyshawn George, Alex Sarr, or Bub Carrington, they've all found ways to contribute in other areas. So I think that's certainly encouraging, because regardless of what happens with Kuzma later in the year, you have to assume that they're just going to hand the keys to these young guys and tell them, figure it out. You three, Bilal Coulibaly, get some basically on-the-job training, so to speak, in terms of leading the team, see what they have there, because you're going to have another high draft pick. So you're talking about adding another talented young piece to that puzzle next summer. So see what you have now with those guys, and I think they're going to be one of those teams that once the calendar flips 2025, and even more so after the trade deadline, they're going to be the ones that managers are going to need to target for those, deep league or low rostered value pieces.
Yeah, totally agree. Noah, what are your thoughts on Kyshawn George and then also Bub Carrington and his phenomenal play? I don't see him going away either at this point. Like, I don't think anyone's made any mention of Malcolm Brogdon returning in any capacity right now, just by the way Bub Carrington's been playing.
Yeah, no, as far as Bub, he's been fantastic. And like Raph was saying, on the job training, they're going to focus on getting these young guys minutes because it's going to help them get a better pick and help those guys develop. It just makes sense and is a smart thing for a rebuilding team to do instead of trying to fake it and pretend like we're trying to win games. Like, no, we're focused on development to win championships in 5 years. It's smart. So we'll see him continue to play well, hopefully continue to play better, like just continue to grow over the course of the season. Same thing with Alex Sarr, who's the third rookie in that mix. And then Kyshawn George, he was good before he became a starter, or I guess fine, seeing a good amount of minutes, played really well as a starter, started 4 out of 5 games. And then their last game with Kuzma back, got bumped out of the starting lineup, saw a hit in minutes, was okay. So he's not necessarily like a must roster in standard leagues, like redraft leagues. But if Kuzma misses time and he bumps back into the starting lineup, then I think he is a guy that's worth rostering / streaming at that point. But I wouldn't necessarily feel like I have to hold on to him just for like while I'm waiting on Kuzma to miss more games, because it might not be until February that he's missing games consistently.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I was surprised to see Bub Carrington still 26% rostered in Yahoo leagues. That is crazy. Way too low. Definitely a guy that you could put in points or 9-cat leagues. He's currently 95th in 9-cat leagues. So yeah, definitely need to get on that if he's on your waiver wires. Just wanted to highlight the fact that DeAndre Ayton missed last game when put Donovan Klingan into the starting lineup. From a fantasy perspective, is this a guy that should be on watch lists around the league here? I mean, Robert Williams is back. He played really well in limited minutes last night. Actually, it's really great to see. He's like shooting threes now too. So yeah, but I think it's, you're obviously looking at Donovan Klingan for the rebounding and the blocks. If there's real potential there, is that someone that you'd be interested in, Raph?
Yeah, watch list for sure. I think Robert Williams played like 25 minutes last night. So I think he played a few more than Klingan. It feels like kind of a hot hand situation with those two. Whichever one's playing better is going to get the majority of the minutes out of them especially when Ayton's down. But yeah, I think Klingan will be a watch list, because I think along the lines of those Washington guys, as the season progresses, you're going to have more minutes for him just because they kind of know what they have with these veterans. And quite frankly, it hasn't been good enough because they wouldn't be in the lottery position if it were. So, I think we'll see more of him as the season goes on. With Robert Williams, man, I don't know. As much as I want to believe in him, and we've seen him have some great moments in terms of fantasy value, the injuries just make it really difficult to count on him. And they've got a second game of back-to-back tonight against Minnesota. So that may be more reason to roll the dice on Klingan, because I don't know if Ayton or Williams will be available for that one.
Mm-hmm. And are you picking up Shaedon Sharpe? He played 32 minutes last game, 17 points, 3 steals, which I think was a nice thing to see in his stat profile. I mean, it was a very surprising win by the Trailblazers. I mean, they just pretty much owned the Timberwolves last night. Definitely looked like the Timberwolves did not take them seriously. And then, Scoot Henderson was getting whatever he wanted. Robert Williams was hitting 3. Like, it was just all bad. So I kind of chalked that up to like, oh, Shaedon had a good game. I don't know that I'm ready to add him yet because, we know how streaky he can be. But yeah, I just want to get your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I think you could. I'm not rushing to add him. He did play very well last night. And if he can continue to do that, then yeah, he's absolutely a must add. But it's more of a wait and see kind of thing because he should get minutes. But in the past, he's been a guy that can really score the ball and not give you really anything else.
Right.
So is that a guy that you're rushing to add just because he's playing more minutes? So yeah, I'd keep an eye on him. I'm not adding him yet.
Yeah, not adding him yet. But I think it's something to consider if you're in points leagues, perhaps if he continues this scoring output.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's definitely one of those guys that tends to be better for points leagues than categories. All right, let's go to Sunday night. Let's talk about it because there's a really good football game on. The Stars are out in Los Angeles for Sunday Night Football when Justin Herbert and the Chargers host Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Tune in to NBC and Peacock at 7 p.m. Eastern as they lead you up to kickoff in Southern California. And if you didn't have Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, or Lamar Jackson on your teams last week, you probably lost. I unfortunately had to go against Jamar Chase in like 3 leagues. So it was a bad week for me. Dude put up like 50 fantasy points. But speaking of fantasy points, let's talk about what to do for the rest of the week for streaming purposes. The teams that you can avoid, don't look at the Denver Nuggets. They only play one more. They haven't even played yet. They play on Friday, so they have 2 games on the weekend. So if you're holding on to Peyton Watson, you got to continue to do it. Just hold the line. He'll be there soon enough. The Golden State Warriors, though, they only play 1 more game. So it might be harder to. I mean, Raph already told you guys you should probably drop Brandon Brzezinski. I think the same could be said for some of those other fringe guys. DeAnthony Melton continues to look good, but like if you need to get some more production, I'm not mad if you need to drop them either. But yeah, I want to know the guys that you guys are targeting. So I'll start with you, Raph, who is a couple guys that we haven't talked about that you may be looking to add this week.
I think I'm going to go with the ultimate dart throw for this rookie here, Kyle Filipowski. He had a good night last night against the Suns coming off the bench. Utah plays 3 more games this week. The first of those 3 games is against Dallas on Thursday, and that's the lone game of the night. So I think Thursday, if you're looking for some streaming options, obviously Mavericks and Jazz players will be in play. Lauri Markkanen he played. There was a game after he took a hard fall in San Antonio, which some may have feared could potentially re-aggravate that back issue, but it didn't. He played 31 minutes. So I think Filipowski, someone played 21 minutes last night, could have value for the remainder of this week. I don't have John Collins' roster percentage in front of me right this minute, but I think he's someone else. If he's available in your league, you may want to give him a shot with Walker Kessler sidelined.
Yeah, how long is Walker Kessler supposed to be sidelined for? Is this day-to-day right now?
It's day-to-day, and Collins is at 88% rostered, so we're really talking about really shallow leagues at this point. But I think he's someone he blew up last night in terms of the stat line, so he could be in for a good run if Kessler has to miss more time.
Yeah, I think that's certainly on point. I had Filipowski last week. He caught that DNP, and I was like, damn, why'd I waste my draft? Why'd I waste my stream on that? And then, of course, now he's like firmly back into the rotation, and I think we're starting to see really what he can do. And as you pointed to, that Jazz schedule is probably the best from Wednesday on. So if there are any straggling Jazz players out there, you might want to give them a look. Noah, who are you picking up for this week, or maybe looking into next week?
Yeah, as far as some guy that for this week that we haven't talked about. Yeah, because I mean it's one in front of the other, but I want to mention both. Is Royce O'Neal and Ryan Dunn in Phoenix. Yeah. I would say Royce is probably the priority. even though Ryan Dunn has started the last 2 games, Royce has played more minutes and has just in general been very good in fantasy this year. I also didn't verify just to make sure that he was not rostered very much, because everybody may already be on top of this and he's rostered everywhere, but he's on Basketball Monster 72 this year in 9-cat, and he's just going to put up numbers across the board. He hasn't even shot well the last 2 games, but with Kevin Durant out, I'm expecting him to have at least a couple big shooting nights and then some other stats across the board. So I would say Royce over Ryan Dunn, but don't forget about Ryan Dunn.
Yeah, Ryan Dunn he'll get in those sneaky starts too, man. So I mean, Bradley Beal is he got hurt again. What did he leave with, a calf injury? Yeah. So we could see more dependency on Grayson Allen, Ryan Dunn. Sticking to Phoenix though, Yusuf Nurkic is day to day, and I mean Mason Plumlee's been putting up couple numbers the last couple of games, man. 15 and 14 with a block, and then the game before that he had 6 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 assists. So if you're in need of a big man, I think Mason Plumlee is certainly in streamable territory right now, just by the production that he's providing in both of those areas. Trying to think of someone else that I was eyeing here. We talked about Jared McCain already. Yves Missi, we already talked about. I think he has a nice opportunity coming up. Who else? What are your guys' thoughts on Moussa Diabate? Because, I mean, outside of rebounding, he's doing his thing. Is there any potential that he could do more than just be a rebounder? I mean, he's 3 straight over 10 rebounds, and Nick Richards is going to be out for weeks. We don't know anything about Mark Williams. So is this, I think I posed this question to you last week, Raph, and it was more of a Grant Williams and C. Is it still a Grant Williams and C, or is Diabate like kind of maybe possibly on your watch list?
I think Moose is on the watch list now. I'm not rushing to pick him up because I don't fully believe what I've seen, but give him credit for having done it, obviously. But yeah, I think he's a watch list guy for me right now.
How about you, Noah?
Yeah, I think honestly, the schedule is kind of a little bit in his favor. So don't add him now, but they do have a back-to-back on Saturday and Sunday. So they just don't play the next 3 days. So if you need somebody on those days, add him Friday night or early Saturday morning. And he'll get you rebounds and blocks. I mean, 15 boards, 3 blocks in their last game. Had 12 points because he hit 6 of his 7 shots. But those are really, it's rebounds and blocks that he's really going to provide value in. So I'd say it's worth taking a chance on him.
Yeah, he kind of seems like he's in that Yves Missi territory of like, hey, man, there's just like no one else around. So I'm just going to, if I be productive in my minutes that I'm provided. I thought it was interesting that Denny Abida is one of the most dropped players right now. He's down 10% from yesterday. He's under 50%, 57% right now. And he finally had a good game after a string of bad ones. I don't know if I'd say bad, but I'd say below expectation. Is that someone that you would pick up on waivers if he hit your waiver wire?
I don't think so. Just because he's playing a position where Portland's really lacking options, and Shaedon Sharpe was that guy at the 2. Now that Shaedon's back in the starting lineup, maybe Abdia has value tonight if Shaedon sits out second game of the back-to-back. But I think overall, I'm not really looking to pick him up.
Yeah, I agree. Same exact logic. Those are Shaedon Sharpe's minutes now. So,
yeah. And then one injury we also didn't talk about was Malik Monk missing what looks to be a couple weeks. Are we picking up Kevin Huerter? Is that someone that intrigues you, or do we also know who he is? Very surprised at his defensive stats lately, though. Dude's been getting a lot of steals and contributing in the stocks area, but we know who he is. Threes guy, scoring, but pretty volatile.
Yeah. I'd say, threes, maybe the steals can stay that high. I'm not confident in that. And then I just want to throw out Keon Ellis' his name, even though he was bad in their last game. I think he's definitely a guy to at least keep an eye on because when he gets the opportunity in the past, he's been very good at getting defensive stats. That hasn't always been the case this year, but keep an eye on him is what I'll say.
All right. So I think we covered just about everybody for week 4. Tap in with us next time same time, same place, Twitch, 11 p.m. Pacific. I can't do math right now. It's been an hour. So with that, we'll see y'all
Probably
next
11.
week for week 5. 11 o'clock. Yeah, there it is. 11. There it is. We'll see y'all next week. I said 2 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. See, that's just this. It's the Pelicans, man. Blame the Pelicans. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.